Secretary, Ministry of Buddha Sasna, Government of Sri Lanka, Admiral K.K. Nair, Chairman, Vivekananda International Foundation, Shri Gurumurthy, Vice Chairman, Vivekananda International Foundation, Mr. Damenda, Porage, Deputy Secretary General of International Buddhist Confederation, distinguished participants and guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Vivekananda International Foundation and International Buddhist Confederation, I extend a hearty welcome to the eminent speakers, distinguished guests, media personalities to this Asian Buddhist Media Conclave. This conference will focus on developing suitable communication methodologies to promote conflict avoidance and sustainable development. It is heartening to note that scholars, writers, academics, filmmakers, TV, print, and social media personalities from a number of countries are participating in this conclave. As you are aware, in 2015, a Hindu-Buddhist Samvad was launched in this very hall at the initiative of Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe of Japan. And the theme was conflict avoidance and environmental consciousness. A declaration was adopted at Bodh Gaya, which noted that, and I quote, the Hindu-Buddhist civilizations have a special responsibility to work on conflict avoidance and environmental consciousness for expounding the philosophical principles common to Hinduism and Buddhism to save the world from fratricidal conflicts, unquote. Friends, in a world torn apart by conflicts fueled by narrow geopolitical interests, it is necessary to look for alternative ideas to construct a more humane, caring, and inclusive society and world order. While globalization and technological advances have brought enormous benefits to society, the world is also witnessing rising inequality, crisis of identity, deepening of alienation, environmental degradation, and loss of biodiversity. Morality and ethical principles have been relegated to the background in a world marked by crass materialism and self-centeredness. Around us, for instance, in West Asia and Africa, we see number of civil wars, large-scale human migrations, and human suffering. Millions of people, including women and children, are living in subhuman conditions in relief camps across the world. Clearly, something is wrong with the way the present world order is shaping. We need to think about our future and take corrective actions as soon as possible. In a world of turmoil and conflict, ancient Indic Buddhist civilizations can give guidance as the principles touch human nature at the deepest level. They have the potential for providing the foundational principles for a new world order based on conflict avoidance, environmental consciousness, and sustainable development. The world is looking for new organizing principles which prioritize peace and cooperation over conflicts and violence. Prime Minister Modi, in his numerous speeches delivered at prominent international fora, has expounded the themes of Vasudev Kutumbakam, that is, the world is a family, and Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, that is, let there be happiness for all. We must find an alternative to the world order driven by greed, profit motive, and reckless exploitation of resources. These are noble ideas and noble vision, but these need to be converted into reality. A well thought out strategy of which effective communication in the age of instant connectivity must be an important ingredient of this strategy. The Asian Buddhist Media Conclave will discuss how the humane message of Hindu-Buddhist civilizations can be spread effectively through media networks, films, TV, print, social media, popular culture, and through capacity building. This will require thought, vision, resources, cooperation, and perseverance. Confident that the conclave will throw up practical suggestions, I wish the participants success in their deliberations. Thank you very much. And now I request Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya, Secretary General of IBC, to address.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhavatu sabha mangalang rakhantu sabha devata sabha buddhanubhavena sada suthi bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabha mangalang rakhantu sabha devata sabha dhammanubhavena sada suthi bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabha mangalang rakhantu sabha devata sabha sanghanubhavena sada suthi bhavantu te. Most venerable members of Mahasangha, Shri Gurumurthy ji, Dr. Arvind Gupta ji, Honorable Upasaka Mr. Chandrapema Gamage ji, and our Upasaka Damenda Porage ji, members of media fraternity, distinguished guests, Upasakas and Upasikas. In fact, we have been having a series of events for last few days, and many of our friends, they have been traveling quite long journey continuously. I hope you are not so tired to attend this program today. And we are having this program today and tomorrow. As you have seen in the concept note and what our Dr. Arvind Gupta ji has presented to you, the media conference, Asian Buddhist Media Conclave, in my knowledge, I think it is the first time of this kind. If anywhere else, I have no knowledge of the Buddhist media personals coming together to think and find out some strategies or solutions that the world is facing today. So people ask the questions, why the Buddhism and media? Why Buddhism and business? Because there are areas now coming up to rethink the problems we are facing. I understand it is really very, very important because the communication channel, the things that are happening, which is not under our control, many things are happening. But the very important point is how we look at it, how we present the fact, how we really communicate the truth or untruth or fake truth to the world that shape the opinions of the world population and that create some impact, either positive or negative. So here we are discussing today in this conclave mindful communication for conflict avoidance and sustainable development. Surely, when we are mindful, then we are actually with the truth, with the fact, with the reality. When we are not mindful, then we are away from the truth, facts, and reality. So it is necessary for the media persons and for everybody to be mindful of everything that's happening around us. And in order to have a peaceful society, it is necessary to communicate or have a channel to really present the positive image, a positive perspective of the things that's happening so that we can convert or transform the negative energy into positive things so that we can build peace, which we all want. And the media persons coming from different countries of Asia especially, I would heartily welcome you here on behalf of International Buddhist Confederation and also VIF, that remaining time today after this session and tomorrow to work upon and find out how the Buddhist community can use this mindfulness technique in our communication to the world, where we can represent the facts, the truth, the events, the teachings happening around the world from the perspective of the teachings of the Buddha, that is, which talks about mainly focusing on the present moment, to be mindful and try to work out with the underlying principle of metta, karuna, and chaga. It means compassion, loving kindness, and charity or simplicity. I hope there'll be many things coming up and we can contribute to the world from our Buddhist perspective, how media can be also helpful to rebuild the world that we are living in. If I'm allowed, that as everybody thinks, the media people need to be given the freedom of thought, of free thinking, freedom of speech. Though I am not a media person as such, but I also communicate some ideas to people. So if I'm allowed to think a different line of thought, what I have been thinking is the topic we have given today, or we have taken here today, is conflict avoidance and sustainable development. Then I was thinking the words of the Buddha, which says, Manopubhaghama Dhamma, Manosetha Manomaya. It goes on that way. That means whatever we focus, that happens. So in English also we find saying, what you think all day long, you become. So where is your focus? That happens, that comes. This is the mental laws. There are certain physical laws, certain mental laws that operate in the nature of the world. So from that point of view, if we are talking about conflict avoidance, whether we are to avoid or not to avoid, whether we are to resolve or to avoid conflict, but our focus is still on the conflict, still on the conflict. So I was just having some other line of thought where I felt like, say, darkness, dukkha, suffering. So is it appropriate for me to discuss the avoidance of darkness, avoidance of suffering, or lighting of the lamp or light, which automatically will eliminate or remove the darkness? So our focus area is not on darkness. So we don't have to talk about avoiding darkness. Once you light, darkness will disappear. It's natural. It's the truth. So when we build up peace and harmony, the suffering will disappear. So from that point of view, I was thinking, definitely this is also very important initiative. We'll be working on that. Whether can there be any other alternative thought that we work on something called harmonious coexistence. When there is harmony, when we work for harmony, automatically conflict will be reduced. And that also this harmony, not only among the human beings, harmony, yes, coexistence means it will include all other species. We are talking about the conflict, mainly the religious conflict. But the religious conflicts, it has its root on different belief systems, different ideologies. So when we work together to create harmony and understanding for coexistence of all, and that also beyond borders, whatever is truth is truth. So it doesn't have any kind of border or identification. This is the Hindu truth, Buddhist truth, Christian truth, or your truth or my truth. Truth is true. Suffering is suffering. Conflict brings always suffering. So that's what my understanding. Maybe we can think also creating a harmonious coexistence beyond borders of all the living beings. And that can be another approach that we can work on. The next point is sustainable development. I have a very big doubt on this concept of sustainable development. Are we really ready for this concept, sustainable development? This is my question. The sustainable development is for development, the very concept of development. When we talk about development, what comes to our mind, or to our mind? Naturally, it comes the picture of the material development, big buildings and high-speed widened roads, big malls, many cities. All these things are coming as the picture of development. Is it real development? Can this kind of development be sustained? That is the question. Because when we destroy hundreds of trees, hundreds of lives to build one house, one bridge, do we think that this is definition of development? We are causing much harm to create something, one unit or two units of things. And we create so many things. If human minds are not developed, and if human minds are full of all whatever is happening now, hatred, egoism, anger, and a sense of competing with others, fighting with others, if our minds are not developed, do you think this kind of development will last for long? Who knows tomorrow? There may be a very big kind of explosion that somebody might press the button and whole thing, all the building structures will be in the dust. Possible. So what I understand is if we are to have sustainable development, we have to focus not only on the material development or the physical development, but also, very importantly, the mind development of the minds of human beings, irrespective of your background, religion, or nationality, caste, and creed. And in order to have the development sustainable, what I understand, we have to also learn from nature, how nature lives, or how nature goes on. I was thinking a world where there is no human being. What would happen in that world? Actually, I don't have that writing. I just have composed some poem on that. I don't have it with me right now. No, what I understand is, if we look at the nature, the animals and the other living beings in the nature, they live naturally. They take only whatever is required from nature. They use it and be happy. Then look at us, what we are doing. We are not only exploiting the nature or using the nature to meet our need, but we are exploiting nature to such an extent to store which are not required for us today. Storing up. So that is why it's necessary to have sustainable development. We have to learn from nature. That means what? We have to practice the Indian value. We have something called, of course, Indian values, human values only. Something called, in Buddha word, Pali, it's called Chaga. And it is in Sanskrit, I think it's called Tyaga. Tyaga. That means we have to let go many things. We have to give up, abandon, renounce all the things we are possessing, keeping with us, which are not necessary, in fact. So are we ready for that? This is the question. So if we are to have sustainable development and build peace, so we can also have this conflict avoidance conferences and discussion. At the same time, I would propose have discussion and conferences on peace building, harmonious coexistence with all living beings, and work on this line, that how many of us are ready to practice the three concepts of Chaga, I mean, Tyaga, renounce, not to amass so many things. Take only whatever is required for us, for our sustenance from the nature. And allow nature to go in some way, to rejuvenate. And metta, cultivate the mind, human mind, have certain things, either it is in Hinduism or in Christianity, in Buddhism, wherever it is. Our focus should be on the development of human mind now, so that we can remove the elements from the mind which are responsible for conflicts, which are responsible for violence, which are responsible for destruction. Let's try to reduce that. That means practicing of metta karuna, loving kindness and compassion. When our mind is full of this loving kindness, compassion, and if we are ready to live a life of chaga, simplicity, a simple life, and when we all join hands, work together, as we desire for peace, we all want peace. When we all work together for peace, I'm sure peace can be achieved. Otherwise not. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for those very illuminating words. And now I invite Mr. Chandrapema Gamage, Secretary, Ministry of Buddha Shasana, Government of Sri Lanka. He's our guest of honor today.
Venerable monks, special invitees, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank organizers of International Buddhist Confederations and many organizers of this event. Today, in my view, many people of various countries draw their attention to mindfulness and the Buddhism. Buddhism provides solutions not only people's day-to-day life problems, but also broadly countries' socio-economic problems like ethnic problems, religious problems, etc. Therefore, this endeavor is very important because media can play important role to protect and upgrade our Buddhism. Therefore, this endeavor of International Buddhist Confederation is very important. Therefore, I would like to again and again thank for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I invite Shri S. Gurumurthy, Vice Chairman, VIF, and Senior Columnist and on political and economic issues, and now the Director in the RBI, Shri Gurumurthy.
Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya, Secretary General, International Buddhist Confederation. Shri Chandrapema Gamage, Secretary, Ministry of Buddhist Sasna, Government of Sri Lanka. And Mr. Damenda, Porage, and all the important people present here, and my colleague, Dr. Arvind Gupta. The concept paper for this meet speaks about three distinct notable concepts. One is conflict avoidance, which has always been the whole goal of all great people for millennia. Sustainable development, which is comparatively a new idea. And the third is mindful communication for both. All these are seemingly ideals, but every ideal is to be tested as to its practicality and also whether it is a workable model and how necessary it is. And if you take all these three tests into account, there is absolutely no doubt that these are necessary for human survival. So, how do we handle this? We are in a world which is driven by context. In fact, all texts have virtually died. In the context of the media to which I belong, the media is interested only in hourly news. So, in a media which is so context driven, how are we going to infuse eternal thought, eternal models, eternal thinking, eternal goals? These are two conflicting situations. And if you look at how the shelf life of ideas have been coming down, for example, take colonialism, which lasted for 200 years. Capitalism lasted for 100 years. Socialism lasted for 50 years. Globalization, within 25 years, it has been questioned so badly. And when globalization was expounded as the way for resolution of all conflicts, in fact, Francis Fukuyama even wrote a book, The End of History and Last Man, in which he said, all conflicts have ended. Market capitalism and liberal democracy is the answer for all the ills which the world has been facing for millennia. And we have now got at the solution, and all the history departments can close down because history records only conflicts. Hereafter, there is going to be no conflict. You can understand how, in a context, a powerful intellectual can be driven to conclude there will be no conflict because the human beings are born with conflicts in their mind. It is sourced in all the evils which every religion is trying to fight. So, shelf life of ideas is coming down because there is no towering intellectualism to have a helicopter view of what will happen 25 years later, 50 years later, 100 years later. We are driven by the contextual compulsions which produce ideas which cannot last for more than a decade or even less. Now look back at what happened from the Second World War, which was perhaps the mother of all the conflicts in modern times. It was succeeded by Cold War. Cold War period also resulted in huge number of deaths. For example, in Cambodia alone, some 3 million people's bones were found completely buried. Extermination of a kind which modern times couldn't prevent. With all the institutions that we created, international cooperation that we forged, United Nations that we constructed, it couldn't prevent such a naked and violent crime. So ultimately, globalization, which is supposed to bring about through commerce, through economics, through investment, through trade, peace and harmony among people, has been violently shaken by the idea of civilizational clashes, which came within 5 years of the initiation of the process of globalization. Why all this? Unless we read history, a lot of researches have been done, but very little application has been there to read the data. For example, if you want to avoid the conflicts, we must go back to the history of conflict. One of the finest work that has been done as to what is the output of conflict is by Professor R.J. Rummel of Virginia University. He produced a huge volume of literature over a period of 30 years, and he has put it in a website called that's a website on conflicts, which is the Democide is the name of the website, in which he has traced that in the 20th century itself, there has been 300 million deaths. 20th century alone. Violent killings, mass killings of human beings by human beings. And he works back to say that the pre-20th century, for 19th centuries, the death could be of the order of 680 million to 1.2 billion. All regions of the world. But if you look at what is the death in India, from the 5th century before and till 13th century, the only 3 instances of mass killing, which Rummel notes, is Ashoka's Kalinga War, in which 100,000 people died, and in Sati and Thagi, which are sporadic violence, in which the deaths are only in tens of thousands. It is not a matter to feel proud that even 10,000 people were killed in Sati or Thagi. But considering that 1.2 billion people were exterminated, how is it that in India, deaths have been so low? There has been no great war in which people have been exterminated. Despite the fact that India has been an economic power till the 17th century, from the 1st century AD, it has been the leading economic power of the world, and the competition was only between India and China till the 19th century beginning as to who is the number 1 or who is the number 2. The shift took place only in the late 18th century or the second half of 19th century and 20th century, and power shifted to the Western societies. So how is it that in this geography, which housed always the largest population of India, even above China at one point in time, violence has been so low? This is a matter for historic investigation. This is a matter for sociological investigation. It is a matter for political probe to understand how in a country where languages are plenty, living models are plenty, food is diverse, but still one idea that we should not kill each other has permeated. And unless you study this phenomenon and contrast it with the mass killing that has been taking place everywhere in the world, you will not be able to understand where is the key to conflict avoidance. The entire process I would divide into two parts. Take, for instance, what is the fundamental principle which has made killings absent virtually in the Indian geography? It is because of a philosophic approach. Even religion was philosophy here. Ideology means only, philosophy means also. The idea that I am the only truth, that I only know what the solution is. This applies even to modernity. Modernity thinks that it has answered to every issues of the world, whether it is man-woman, whether it is languages, whether it is politics, whether it is economics, whether it is living relationship. For everything, modernity claims that this is the only solution. Any other solution is not even worth having dialogue with. So if you understand that the philosophic approach, which is inclusive, which says also, instead of an approach which says only, is the difference that constitutes two paradigmic approach to life. And in this lies two different ideas. One is doctrinal tolerance and another is doctrinal intolerance. Doctrinal tolerance is the collective work done by a civilization for millennia. Individual tolerance is a choice. Doctrinal tolerance is a collective effort, and that requires enormous amount of adjustments. You have to include everything. You have to include all the differences. You have to include even things which you will never disagree with as something which you have to live with. That is why in India, we had not one god or two gods or thousands of gods. We had crores of gods. There was a time when the population of India was less than the population of gods, because we included every god. No god is an exception. Today, the entire world is fighting over whether your god is superior or my god is superior. Swami Vivekananda said, when he went to America, the attitude of certain religions is, whether your God is right or my God is right, let us have a boxing match to decide. Now we are having bombs to decide. So unless we are able to understand what is the drive, unless the drive, unless the drive which makes people intolerant. Basically, human beings are intolerant. Basically, they are conflict prone. It requires enormous collective effort to ensure that they do not conflict, they are not intolerant, they do not fight. That collective effort requires a philosophy. Ideology and philosophy are two alternatives. Ideology says, I am right, you are wrong. In fact, in the debate between ideology and philosophy, I don't find any philosopher having written any thesis on it. It is really a politician, Bill Clinton, who spoke in the year 2006, the difference between ideology and philosophy. He said, philosophic approach means we can have a dialogue. Ideological approach means there is no dialogue. I am right, you are wrong. He said, this is what is leading the world into conflict. This is not only religion, even secular ideologies. Some presume they are right. Being part of the media, I have struggled against it, because to write against an ideology is the worst crime that you can commit in media. Media is a very difficult animal. Those who are even right-minded in the media cannot produce right communication, because the ecosystem has been taken over by ideological drives, including modernity. So, what is the alternative to this? Hinduism and Buddhism evolved an alternative called Tarka Shastra. Tarka Shastra was the basis on which internal issues within Hinduism, internal issues within Buddhism, issues between Hinduism and Buddhism were handled. In Tarka Shastra, you can never have a dialogue unless you study the other person's philosophy completely. You must master the other person's philosophy. Then only you are entitled to criticize it. In fact, many scholars, having studied the other philosophy, felt the other philosophy is better than your philosophy. This is how confluence took place between Hinduism and Buddhism. Confluence took place between different streams of pursuit of truth. No one could ultimately say this is the only way to truth and all other ways are false, because there was a constant search for truth without being confined by ideological compulsions. Then came one Hans Kunz, one of the finest Christian theologians of the 20th century. He was behind the German church preparation for the Vatican II, which brought about a lot of changes within Christianity's approach to other religions, because Christianity originally believed that it was the only true faith and there is no role or scope or any adjustment with other faiths. It is Vatican II that made Christianity recognize that other faiths also have validity. In that, Hans Kunz played an excellent role, and he formulated 3 principles. He said, there can be no peace between nations unless there is peace between religions. There cannot be peace between religions unless there is a dialogue among religions. And there cannot be dialogue among religions unless the fundamentals of each religion is allowed to be investigated. This is the most important thing. In a dialogue, you cannot say, no, you can't do this because that will offend that religion. It's not possible. For example, if somebody calls me a kafir, and I must know why I'm a kafir. Am I a kafir? What will you do with me? Am I a heathen? What will you do with me? So, this is necessary because the world is no more living in compartments. It is living together. So, a powerful intellectual movement is needed to create a basis for an investigation into every thought system, which not only governs the adherents of that thought system, but also affects the other people who are not the followers, who may not agree with it. So, the words, the concepts, the methods that my religion forges for myself is okay for me. But if my religion forges this very concept and lays down rules for people who are not followers of that religion, then conflicts arise. So it is necessary that there is a dialogue, and the dialogue has to be forced by a very powerful and persuasive intellectual movement. As I said, modernity has also the same approach. My solution is the best solution because modernity hates traditions. And it hates traditions which are conflict prone as well as traditions which avoid conflicts. They keep all traditions as one and say tradition is no way because tradition has not led the world to any good result. And so all traditions are bad. And it is the fundamental belief of modernity, tradition is wrong. That I am wearing this bindi is sufficient for a modernist to reject my thoughts. Whether my thought is good or bad is irrelevant. So long as a bindi is there on my forehead, This is sufficient for the modernist to say, I am an illiterate. This is far more intolerant. This is far more violent. This is far more counterproductive than all the religious violence and hatreds and intolerance put together. Modernity is a very, very powerful instrument, which also needs an intellectual penetration. So we need to create a powerful and penetrating intellectual alternative driven by philosophy. And that philosophy has to be based on a dialogue. That is why in 2015, when the Hindu-Buddhist meet took place in this very forum, where the Prime Ministers of India and Japan spoke, the Prime Minister of India in person and the Prime Minister of Japan over video, they emphasized this concept that there has to be a dialogue, but the dialogue cannot be based on the fact I am right, you are wrong. The dialogue has to be based on a foundation that maybe you are also right. Unless this also word comes in, there is no scope for dialogue. And so, as Hans Kung said, as the Hindu Buddhists found from the beginning of Tarka Shastra that you have to understand the other person's conviction is equally important for him, and if I have to penetrate and deny that conception, I have to first master his philosophy and then have a dialogue with him. And even agreeing to disagree is a model. Agreeing to disagree is a model. It's not necessary there should always be an agreement. Vegetarians and non-vegetarians can coexist without vegetarians being forced to eat non-vegetarian and non-vegetarians being forced to eat only vegetarian. Because both have their own fundamental beliefs about their world view. It's not necessary the world has to be non-vegetarian. It's not necessary the world has to be vegetarian. This is the best example one can give. So, the world has to exist with the differences. I will tell you my village. They are all illiterate people. I was in a village till my 16th year. And that is what made me understand the world. Many people think, of course, even Prime Ministers of India have said village is a rotten place and an illiterate place. From a village, I learned this. You know, in the village, there is a personal God which you worship. There is a village God which you worship. There is a border God which you worship. There is a God at the border of every village. There is a common God for the village, Grama Devata, and a personal God which your family worship. You are in tune with all the three gods. And I'll tell you my experience. In the border Kali temple, we used to go, being vegetarians, we used to go and offer nariyal, we used to go and offer bananas and come away at 5 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, the same God will demand meat. It will demand booze. Because the worshippers changed. We worship God in the way we want. We defined gods. We taught them what kind of habits they must have vis-a-vis us. So there is nothing like an immutable God. We had a relationship with God. That relationship made gods malleable, kind, not difficult to deal with. So I learned this from my village. It's not from a philosophy book. It's not from any modernist theorem. So we have to investigate how a society, for thousands of years, the most populous society, lived in peace. It lived in peace because of this principle that everybody will be like what they are, and you cannot impose your ideas on them, and you need not have to accept their ideas. This is probably the post-modern thought which even the modernists have to accept. The Hindu-Buddhist tradition, as I said, is having the DNA of dialogue. Even with media, you need to have dialogue. The media today is one of the most illiterate institutions because it is concerned with only what is happening today, this minute. Every television channel is how to out-report the other is the only thing. After television channels have come, newspapers are produced, but I don't think newspapers are read except the headlines. So I am one of the column writers. I'm supposed to be a very well-known column writer. I can tell you, the way people used to read my columns 20 years back, they don't read now unless I catch them with a catchy headline. So you have to invite people to read it. They are not interested in reading because reading has become a rare affair. Without reading, you don't understand things. By looking at things, you don't understand. You have to read, counter read, you have to read different viewpoints. So media is being led by an illiterate television media. I am putting the facts plain because I am part of the media. So I believe that we need philosophic alternatives from ideological gas chambers. It's a very, very important requirement which only people who are divorced from their context, who are not involved in their context, who are not emotionally attached to the context, who live above the fog, and who look at it from a helicopter perspective as to what will happen in the next 50 years. Only that kind of mind, that kind of intellect, that kind of dialogue, that kind of approach, that kind of meet alone can bring about an alternative. And I am sure the world is now in a one-way traffic. It has now gone too far into it. It cannot even take a U-turn. And so it requires a powerful alternative. And I am happy that the Asian Buddhist meet is here to discuss this. As Dr. Dhammapiya said, that you have been already tired by a lot of meetings that have taken place earlier. I suppose I have been able to communicate some of my thoughts to you, despite the fact that you are tired. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for that insights that you have given. This search for alternative, I think you have given a way as to how this search will succeed. And you have to rescue philosophy from ideological gas chambers. I think this is a very good line, which will be a catchy headline for people to follow. But essentially, it's about dialogue and tolerance about each other's views, and this willingness to be ready to be investigated about your own fundamentals. I think that's a very tough challenge, but probably has to be taken, and that's how this Hindu-Buddhist dialogue and samvad that was set up. Thank you very much for that vibrant keynote address. And now I invite Shri Damenda Porage to give a vote of thanks.
Venerable sirs, distinguished guests, and Dr. Arvind Gupta, and Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya, and Shri Gurumurthy and Mr. Chandrapema Gamage. So my duty is here to propose a vote of thanks. So I also know that most of you are really tired, because so do I, because we have been traveling for like 4 or 5 days. We have had a wonderful pilgrimage. I'd rather say a pilgrimage to Bihar, Maharashtra, and Uttar Pradesh. So, so when I was listening to the vibrant speech by Sri Gurumurthy ji, I just wrote down these lines. So words are the most powerful force available to humanity. We can choose to use this force constructively with words of encouragement, or destructively using words of despair. Words have energy and power with the ability to help, to heal, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, and to humble. So, so this media conclave will result a network with the responsibility of mindful communication. So let me thank the organizers now. Say right, and so I must thank Vivekananda International Foundation and Director Dr. Arvind Gupta for collaborating as an associate partner and allowing IBC to use this wonderful facility for our two-day conclave. Thank you. And I must also thank IBC Secretary General Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya ji for his inspiring leadership and inviting all of us and extending wonderful hospitality in New Delhi. Thank you. And I must also thank the Government of India and especially the Ministry of Tourism, as we are here after their wonderful program, the pilgrimage. It was a really unforgettable experience, I must say. And I must also thank Mr. Amitabh Mathurji for being a great friend of IBC and helping us throughout the past years to take the message of Dhamma to the world. And I must thank the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, for its generous financial support to IBC in carrying out its activities during this conclave. And I must also thank Dr. Kalinga Seniviratna and Mr. Ashok Wangdi for conceiving and coordinating this Buddhist media conclave. Again, I should extend my thanks to IBC Secretariat and our small team for their dedicated service throughout the past, in spite of a lot of difficulties. And last but not the least, I must thank all the delegates of both Asian Buddhist Media Conclave and IBC's special meeting who have come from far off places at such short notice and be here with us. I must thank Ms. Anuttama Ganguly, Joint Secretary of Vivekananda International Foundation, and the entire team of VIF for supporting us in this initiative. And thank you all the dignitaries and the members of VIF for coming here. Sukhi Hotu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We bring this session to close, and you can have a cup of tea before we assemble